Welcome to Stories of the Wanderer, a calming sleep story series created to help you unwind and gently drift into rest. Tonight we enter the second chapter of Where the Roots Speak Slowly, Rainlight Reverie. In this chapter, the wanderer takes shelter from a gentle afternoon rain high in the canopy, where falling droplets, soft light, and the quiet presence of an ancient tree draw him into a calm, reflective reverie. A soft afternoon hush settled over the treetops as a gentle drizzle began to fall. The wanderer stood under the broad eave of an open-sided shelter, watching silvery drops bead along the edges of giant leaves. The day had quietly progressed from the pearly morning into a mild, mist-shrouded noon. Now the sky was a heather grey, and the light that filtered through the canopy was diffuse and calm. The air felt cool against his skin, rich with the fragrance of moss and wet wood. Each raindrop's patter on leaf and plank was soft and irregular, together forming a delicate, soothing rhythm. On a low wooden bench beneath the shelter's leaf-thatched roof, the wanderer tended to a simple task as the rain fell. In his hands lay a small woven basket. Its rim had begun to fray from years of use. With careful, unhurried motions, he threaded a fresh strip of dried palm frond into the loose weave. The material was still slightly green and pliable, releasing a clean, grassy scent as he worked it through the basket's edge. Each pull and tuck of the frond was deliberate, aligning with the unhurried pace of the afternoon. As he worked, he listened to the myriad of gentle sounds around him, the patter of drizzle peppering broad orchid leaves, the soft drip of water gathering on the thatch above, then falling to the platform, and the occasional whisper of a breeze stirring the treetops. These sounds were muffled by the mist, blending into a single tranquil lullaby. Through the filtered light, the forest was painted in watercolors, tiers of lush green softened by skeins of mist, with here and there a bright blossom glistening with tiny jewels of rain. The drizzle intensified for a few minutes, reaching a gentle shower. The wanderer paused his mending and set the basket aside. There was no need to hurry the work. The forest was providing a pause, and he welcomed it. He leaned against the smooth trunk of the shelter's supporting tree, letting his gaze wander across the rain-dappled village. Directly across the platform, a curtain of vines swayed slightly, heavy with moisture. Beyond them, much of the world was veiled in grey-white mist. He could barely see the outlines of nearby platforms and rope bridges connecting neighbouring trees. It was as if his perch floated in a cloud, isolated but comfortingly so. He took a long, slow breath, filling his lungs with the damp, cool air. It carried hints of many subtle scents: the green of crushed ferns, the sweetness of rain-soaked orchids, and the deep, loamy aroma rising from the forest floor far below. Each inhalation was refreshing, and each exhalation released a little more of his own tension into the open air. As he breathed, the wanderer felt his senses sharpen gently. He closed his eyes, simply listening. The rain's music changed moment by moment. At times, a breeze would push the droplets in a waved pattern, so they tapped sequentially across the leaves like fingers on a drum. Other times, the shower eased, and the pattering stilled to irregular drips here and there, like a conversation with silences in between. The canopy above collected and dispersed the rain in turn, creating a soothing, unpredictable rhythm that filled the space under the shelter. The wanderer found himself humming quietly in harmony with it, barely aware he was doing so. It was the same slow tune that had drifted through the mist that morning. A gentle lullaby he had heard someone humming in the distance at dawn. The melody had stayed with him, and now, merged with the rain's patter, it felt like part of the afternoon's atmosphere. He opened his eyes as the rain began to subside. The steady patter softened into a light, sporadic dripping as the clouds began to thin. Pale light crept back into the canopy, and the mist glowed faintly. Across the platform, a single droplet fell from the tip of a broad leaf, landing in the little puddle that had formed on the table beside his forgotten basket. The drop created a set of ripples that spread across the water's surface, then gradually vanished. The wanderer smiled and rose from his bench, drawn by a quiet curiosity toward the edge of the shelter. Stepping beyond the awning, he felt the cool kiss of the last raindrops on his face. The drizzle had nearly passed, leaving everything around him glistening. The wooden boards underfoot were darkened to a rich brown, each groove holding a tiny ribbon of water. He walked to the railing where rain still clung in jewel-like beads along the braided vine balustrade. With a fingertip, he gently touched one of the larger drops balancing on the railing. It quivered and then rolled off, falling through the air into the leaves below. The forest was in a gentle transformation. After the cleansing rain, the colours of the canopy seemed deeper, and the air felt renewed. A soft steam was beginning to rise where stray sunbeams met wet foliage, creating gauzy rays of light that slanted between the trees. In one bright beam that pierced the thinning clouds, the wanderer noticed countless tiny droplets shimmering as they drifted earthward, the last remnants of the shower turning to sparks. It was as if the rain itself was becoming light. He took up his small lantern staff from where it leaned nearby. Though unlit in the daytime, it was helpful as a walking stick, and ventured toward a narrow side path. This was a less travelled route, a slim rope bridge and walkway that meandered out toward the quieter edge of the village. He felt no need to return to any particular place quickly. Instead, he followed the subtle promptings of the moment. Right now, those promptings were in the glimmer of post-rain beauty that beckoned from deeper amidst the trees. Moving with utmost care on the damp planks, he crossed a little rope bridge that curved away from the main platforms. The bridge's vines were soaked dark, and droplets continued to slip off them into the depths. With each step, the bridge swayed softly, and water that had pooled on the board splashed gently around his feet. The wanderer didn't mind. He had walked these paths in all conditions, and his pace was sure and balanced. He was heading toward a corner of the village that was often quiet at this time of day, a cluster of platforms around one of the oldest trees, a place where communal gatherings were sometimes held in the evenings, but which remained empty now in the midday calm. The path led him to a broad platform that nearly encircled the massive trunk of the old tree. The surface was slick with rain, reflecting the sky in patches. A simple railing ran along the outer edge, draped with wet ferns that diffused the light like lace. This was a cherished spot in the village, a place of stories and songs beneath the stars, but now it lay in tranquil solitude. The midday rain had encouraged everyone to pause and seek cover, so he found himself alone here, accompanied only by the quiet drip of water and the presence of the ancient tree. He remembered this venerable giant. Many in the village affectionately called it the listening tree. It had a hollowed heartwood that, legend said, could hold echoes of the world. In the past, children, and more than a few curious adults, would press an ear to its bark, hoping to catch the murmur of old stories or the sigh of the forest itself. The wanderer himself had tried it once or twice in years gone by, and had only ever heard the faint resonance of breeze or the trickle of water. Still, the tree had a reputation for gentle mysteries, and he had always felt a comforting presence in its vicinity. He slowly walked around the great trunk, letting his fingertips trail along its rain-slick bark. The wood was ridged and ancient, softened in places by thick moss. Water droplets collected in the grooves, then merged and trickled downward like tiny streams seeking the earth. In one spot, the roots of the tree arched up to form a natural alcove between trunk and platform. Within that nook, he spotted something that piqued his curiosity. A small pool of water had gathered in a shallow hollow of the wood. The wanderer knelt down to investigate this hidden basin. It was as if the tree itself cupped the rainwater in a wooden palm. Broad ferns and climbing orchids partly overhung it, as though attempting to shield the little pool from casual eyes. With gentle hands, he parted the fronds to get a better look. The surface of the water was amazingly still, considering that the rain had only just ceased. Protected by the tree's roots and the shelter of leaves, it had settled into a perfect mirror. In that tiny mirror, he saw reflected a fragment of the sky, now breaking open to sunlight. Grey clouds were drifting, and between them, patches of blue and a hint of the afternoon sun peeked through. As he watched, a single white bird glided across the reflected sky in the pool, its wings slow and silent. He looked up instinctively and spotted the bird itself ghosting between the trees, a graceful crane or heron far above. But in the pool, it appeared as an otherworldly, upside-down vision, traversing an ethereal sky. His breath caught for a moment at the simple beauty of it. He gazed back down into the water's reflection. It was a world turned softly on its head, the dark lattice of branches and the bright clouds all inverted, floating on the surface of the tree's heart. And there, faint but visible, was his own face also, ghosted over the sky. His features blended with the drifting clouds and leaves. He smiled at the gentle illusion, feeling as if he too were a part of this sky world contained in the tree. Carefully, the wanderer dipped the tips of his fingers into the pool. The water was cool and pure. Tiny ripples fanned out from where he touched, causing the reflection to dance and fragment. Light shattered into wobbly bands. The bird's white shape turned into a streak, then disappeared. For a few breaths, he swirled his fingers lazily, watching the way the water responded, always seeking stillness again the moment he went still. Then he withdrew his hand and simply waited. Slowly, the ripples subsided. The surface leveled into a mirror once more, reforming the image of the brightening sky above. The bird was gone now, but a lone cloud edged in sunlight had taken its place, and his reflection returned as well, eyes looking back at him from that little window. He found in that returning clarity a kind of reassurance. Disturbances come and go, but calmness returns if given time. This little pool had taught that lesson effortlessly. The wanderer reflected on the rain itself, how it had washed the dust from leaves, refreshed the air, and left the forest glistening. In the aftermath, everything felt renewed and clean. He too felt somehow cleansed by being present in it. The concerns of life, such as they were, had been minor that day, but even those seemed to have been washed away by the simple act of sitting with the rain. His gaze drifted from the water to the base of the giant tree by his side. Beneath the overhang of the root where he knelt, the ground, or rather the densely intertwined network of roots and wood that formed the platform's foundation, was dark and damp. Tiny mushrooms, ghostly pale, had sprouted in the hollows, no doubt encouraged by the moisture. They gave off a faint bioluminescent glimmer even in daylight, a subtle green glow that would be visible only in the deepest shadow. The wanderer found their presence endearing. It was as if, even in darkness, the tree fostered its own little stars. He reached out and lightly touched one of the soft mushroom caps in greeting. Then he rose to his feet, leaving the little pool and its secrets undisturbed. A shaft of late-day sunlight slanted in then, briefly illuminating the water and causing the whole alcove to gleam. He stepped back and observed as the beam lit up that hidden space. The pool flashed like a liquid mirror, projecting a ripple of light onto the underside of a branch above. The mushroom's faint glow was overpowered by the golden brightness, and even the old root walls were momentarily cast in warm color. He had happened upon this scene at just the right time. A moment sooner or later, the sun wouldn't have reached this angle. It felt like a small gift of timing. He quietly thanked the forest under his breath for revealing this to him. The air was growing warmer and more humid now, as the sun's rays grew bolder through the thinning clouds. Steam curled up from the wet wood of the platform in translucent wisps. The wanderer stepped out from under the cluster of ferns, moving closer to the great trunk of the listening tree. The platform here was very near the tree's base. In a few spots, the wooden boards were actually fixed directly into the tree, so that the structure and trunk merged seamlessly. He placed a palm flat against the bark. It was broad and solid, still cool from the rain, and pleasantly alive to the touch. He found a spot against the tree where a natural curve created a kind of backrest. The villagers had even placed a large cushion there, woven from strips of cloth and generously stuffed with kapok fiber, to make a comfortable seat for anyone who wanted to spend time by the tree. It was slightly damp, but that didn't deter him. He settled himself down cross-legged on the gently yielding cushion and leaned back into the embrace of the trunk. The wanderer closed his eyes, letting his other senses heighten. Above, droplets still clung to the leaves. He could hear occasional pat-pats as they fell to lower levels or onto the platform. Those sounds were growing sparser now. In the lull, new ones rose, the chorus of insects beginning their daytime chatter after the rain's pause, and the distant calls of birds emerging to shake water from their feathers. Somewhere far off, he heard the hollow knock of a toucan, and closer by the liquid warble of a small tanager singing to celebrate the return of sunshine. Each sound was distinct, yet none intruded on the peace. They were like individual instruments playing in a shared, tranquil piece of music. He kept his eyes closed and rested a hand on his lap, while the other remained on the tree's bark. He was keenly aware of the tree's presence now. It was immense, an ancient being that had seen more days and nights than any person alive. Against his back, the bark felt firm and reassuring. Beneath that outer layer, he imagined the vast network of xylem and heartwood, the hollow cavities somewhere inside that gave the listening tree its name. wondered what it might be like right now inside that hidden hollow. Perhaps the rain had dripped through knotholes and cracks, collecting in puddles deep within. He could picture droplets falling in the dark, unseen by any eye, making little plinks and echoing off the curved inner walls. On impulse, the wanderer left his cane lantern and reached up with his free hand to gently rap a knuckle against the tree trunk beside him. Just a soft knock, curious if the tree would respond. The sound he made was very muted, a dull thud that barely carried. He tilted his head and pressed his ear to the cool bark, listening. A few quiet seconds passed. He caught a faint resonance, but it was hard to tell if it was an echo of his knock or simply a random trick of the tree's endless creaks and movements. For good measure, he remained with ear against the trunk a while longer. In that posture, he breathed slowly and evenly, feeling a little like a child again, hopeful for a secret. Within the tree, he thought he detected something, a gentle whisper of movement. It could have been the vibration of a raindrop sliding in the hollow interior and landing in a distant pool, or the sigh of wind coursing through a hidden gap. It was so faint it might have been his imagination. Still, just the idea of it made him smile. How many subtle sounds lived inside this trunk, rarely heard by anyone. The listening tree held its mysteries close, sharing only tiny hints with those patient enough to be still. He eventually sat back again, withdrawing from the bark and resting both shoulders against it instead, gazing outward now at the scene. The village was beginning to stir from the rain's lull. To his right, across the expanse of the main platform, a good stone's throw away, he noticed someone emerge and hang a few linens to dry now that the sun was peaking. To his left, through the lattice of vines, he saw two children scamper out from underneath a bench, where they'd apparently been hiding and playing while the rain fell. They burst into quiet laughter as they raced each other across a swaying footbridge that led back toward home. Their light footsteps and giggles reached him softly, and he felt his heart warm at their simple joy. The wanderer leaned his head back against the tree, looking up at the canopy. The sky, visible through the breaks in the trees, had shifted to a brighter hue. The clouds were shredding into puffs and streaks, painted with a soft gold as the sun moved westward. Shafts of sunlight were now descending in earnest, illuminating various pockets of the forest. Where they hit wet foliage, the whole area glinted. One broad beam even fell across part of the platform in front of him, revealing tiny rainbow rings in the mist. It lit up countless droplets that still hung in a curtain from the edge of the walkway, making them sparkle like a string of beads. He observed all of this as one might observe a living painting, every element in gentle motion. Rainlight, he mused, had a unique quality. It was as if the forest glowed from within after the rain, everything suffused with a soft luster. In this radiance, the treetop village felt especially enchanting and otherworldly, like a place woven from dream and light. The wanderer sank deeper into his cushion, allowing himself to relax completely. His legs were folded comfortably, his back supported by the broad trunk. With the weather cleared, a balmy freshness had replaced the earlier chill. It would be easy to doze off here, he thought, lulled by the drip of water and the gradually rising chorus of afternoon life. Perhaps he would nap and then continue his day whenever he woke. There was no schedule to keep in this peaceful world above the ground. He took a final glance at the little rainwater pool he discovered, just visible around the curve of a root. In the angled sunlight, it now shimmered clearly, reflecting bright green leaves overhead. A few fallen petals from a blossom had landed on its surface, floating serenely. The sight was charming, like a tiny garden in a bowl, capturing a whole scene in miniature. He carried that image into his mind as he closed his eyes once more. In the stillness that followed, the wanderer's thoughts wandered gently. He found himself thinking of that soft, humming voice from the morning, and how the rain had given him another melody to accompany it. The events of the day drifted through him not as memories of tasks or words, but as sensory impressions. The taste of warm chamomile orchid tea at dawn, the embrace of mist on the rope bridge, the jewel-like rain on leaves, the feel of cool water on his fingers, and the clarity of a reflected sky. And now the solid, reassuring presence of the listening tree at his back. Each moment had unfolded slowly, naturally, offering its own small wonder. He realized that between morning and now, he had not spoken a single word aloud except perhaps a hushed greeting or two. And he hadn't needed to. The forest and his own heart had been in conversation all day in the language of quiet observation. This thought gave him a quiet thrill, communion without speech, understanding without explanation, just by being present and attentive. As if to reinforce this, a gentle thump resonated through the tree just then, as something, perhaps a twig or a fruit knocked loose by a monkey high above, fell and struck the hollow trunk somewhere up top. It was not loud, barely more than a weighty drop, but through the wood it carried a soft, resonant tonk that the wanderer both heard and felt as a light vibration. The sound reminded him of a distant drum played slowly in an echoing hall. His eyes stayed closed, but he smiled. The listening tree was indeed sharing a bit of its music with him this afternoon. Perhaps it was coincidence, but it felt almost like the tree was aware of his presence and gently saying, "I am here." "Thank you," he whispered in response, so quietly it was almost just an exhale. The sentiment was directed to everything at once, the tree, the rain, the day itself for being so generous. A profound peace enveloped him then. In that peace was a hint of anticipation too, though not of anything disruptive. Just the subtle knowledge that each moment holds its own possible surprise, as this day had proven. What might the forest share next, if he remained open to it? The thought was a feather-light curiosity in the back of his drowsy mind. The wanderer let out a long, contented sigh and allowed his head to rest to the side against the tree. His breathing slowed to a near slumberous rhythm. Overhead, a pair of little brown birds flitted past, chirping softly to one another as they inspected the branches for insects stirred out by the rain. He heard them land and peck at the bark a short distance up the trunk, an industrious tapping totally different from the tree's resonant sounds. He listened as their taps and twitterings gradually moved higher and then faded into the canopy. The patch of sunlight on the platform shifted, slowly shrinking as the sun moved on. The forest was in that gentle state between afternoon and evening, where the vibrancy of day's life still lingers, but a languid mood has settled in, as if everything is contemplating a rest. The wanderer drifted in and out of a light doze, not quite asleep, yet far from alert. In this dreamlike state, images from the day played behind his closed eyelids. The sparkling raindrops, the mirror of the hidden pool, golden mist and emerald leaves. They merged and flowed like watercolors. He felt as though he were floating somewhere between the treetops and the sky, just like the reflection he'd seen, half sky and half forest. A gentle throbbing sound began to blend into his awareness, the slow heartbeat of dripping water deep inside the listening tree. He wasn't sure if he actually heard it or simply felt it through his back resting on the trunk, but it was there, a soft tap, 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 at an irregular interval, like the end of rain echoing in the tree's core. The sound was comforting, like the earth's own pulse. Without opening his eyes, the wanderer attuned himself to it. Each tap seemed to sync with the faint rise and fall of his chest. In, out, tap, in, out, tap. The pattern wasn't perfectly regular, but it was steady enough to be lulling. A sense of quiet anticipation curled in him, very subtle, as though something just at the edge of hearing was trying to make itself known. It wasn't urgent. Nothing in this world was urgent, but it was present, patiently waiting. Perhaps it was only the natural curiosity that comes in moments of near silence, when one feels the threshold between wakefulness and dreams, between the known and the unknown. In any case, it was a gentle, safe feeling, like being told a soft secret by the trees that one couldn't quite catch but knew was kind. The wanderer remained very still, wrapped in that sensation, and let it guide him toward a deeper rest. High above, a ray of sunlight broke through and illuminated the canopy with a final golden glow before evening. The light danced across the back of his eyelids in a reddish flash, then faded as the ray shifted. He heard the sound of that sunlight as well, the tiniest crackle as warmth touched moisture on a leaf, making it evaporate. Then shadows lengthened, and coolness returned. In his last moments of wakeful thought, the wanderer felt an effortless gratitude. How gentle this day had been, and yet how full. Morning's song, the rain's reverie, and now the tree's quiet companionship. They were like chapters in a story written not in words but in sensations. And though nothing grand had happened, he sensed that something meaningful had been woven into him through these experiences, like a soft golden thread linking dawn to dusk. As his consciousness teetered on the edge of sleep, he found himself listening one more time to the forest sounds. The distant water dripped deep in the tree, the now occasional plunk of a drop falling from a high leaf onto a fern, the far-off sing-song call of creatures going about their day. He felt the wide trunk against his back and imagined he could feel the tree listening to him too, the tree's awareness as subtle as the mist. With that comforting thought, the wanderer finally allowed the last threads of wakefulness to slip away. His body grew heavy and warm against the cushion and wood. In the canopy, the rain had fulfilled its cycle and left everything refreshed. The mid-afternoon light was gentle and beginning to fade toward evening's dim silver. The village around him remained quiet, respecting the soft spell of the hours after rain. He dozed like that, peaceful and without expectation, cradled in the listening tree's embrace. And in that dozing state, he was entirely open to the hush, to the stirring of curiosity that might greet him when he awoke, and to whatever small wonder the forest might choose to share next. The wanderer had no way of knowing what gentle mystery awaited in the tree's heart, or in the coming hours. He only knew, in his own heart, that he felt ready for it, and that it would arrive softly, as every gift of this day had. As he drifted into deeper rest, the rainforest canopy remained his guardian. A faint breeze whispered through, drying the last of the raindrops and softly rattling the leaves like a distant ocean. The wanderer's breathing slowed to the easy rhythm of sleep, perfectly in time with the living world around him. Above, the listening tree stood silent and strong, holding him against itself, like a parent with a sleeping child, waiting quietly for the moment it might share another secret when the time was right.